Welcome to Cramming Contempo. I am your host, Jose Alfonso Gigayon.
And I am your other host, Mayfit Armayan.
This week we will talk about the Silk Road.
Is it made of silk?
You shouldn't be asking these kind of questions so early on. Anyway, come on and join us. We'll be talking about Silk Road, feudalism, and all the juicy stuff that came in between. That led us to the global economy that we know of today.
So stay tuned to Cramming Contempo.
Economic systems need to find a way to improve our lives and our survival. And to be able to do that, people need to exchange within and outside their societies. What separates having everything we need to survive and having nothing at all is actually trading. But over time, trading was not just concerned with pure survival. It also improved our quality of life by making goods available or making locally available goods come at a cheaper price or higher quality.
In fact, we are so darn addicted to trading that we can't even live without it anymore.
But trading isn't a new thing. In fact, you can find traces of it dating back all the way to the Mesopotamias. But let's begin our session today with a network of trade routes that connected the East and West called the Silk Road.
Which is, by the way, not made of silk.
Then why is it called Silk Road?
It was just called the Silk Road because one of the most lucrative items being traded off at that time was silk. The Europeans were interested in textiles, mechanical clocks, ceramics, glass, compasses, and gunpowder, which they used in some very interesting ways. They also brought some of the excess food the Asians were producing, and at that time, according to Frank, Asia was responsible for 3/4 of the world's gross national product.
But it wasn't just the physical stuff that was being traded off, right?
They also exchanged non-material stuffs like beliefs, cultural practices, and religion.
This led to a very high level of cultural diffusion between the societies engaging in the Silk Road trade. But despite all that, the Silk Road is still not considered as a globalization. Despite the high level of cultural diffusion, there's no real economic interdependence happening between the societies participating in it. So now let's flash forward to the Middle Ages.
The period of knights in shining armor, strange torture methods, and Game of Thrones but without dragons. But another associate made with the Middle Ages is the feudal system. Basically, the king owes these guys because they helped the king acquire the kingdom. So the king grants them fiefs or lands in exchange for military services. And then the noblemen and women made other people work their land not for coin but for a place to sleep, food to eat, and protection.
Money was not the currency at that time. It was either land, goods, or services that mattered.
So after they ditched feudalism for capitalism, it's finally the 1600s. It's time for things to get really spicy here.
I see what you did there. Question, why were the Europeans so obsessed with spices? Did they just like eat bland meat, and when they first tasted spices, you just decided to look it up?
Well, in the olden days, people didn't exactly have refrigerator, so the meat would go bad quickly. Spices didn't just add the flavor to their food, they also preserved the meat and masked the taste of rot. But why were they so expensive? Spices are now cheap nowadays. Well, you don't exactly need to send an entire fleet to retrieve spices from the other side of the world today, now do you? The difficulty in obtaining it was what made it so expensive. Now, going back to the spice trade, it was so darn lucrative that a bunch of British spice traders formed one of the first multinational companies in history, the British East India Company. They wanted to monopolize the spice trade and end Dutch's entire spice trade career. But the Dutch pulled a psych on them because 2 years later, the Dutch created the Dutch East India Company, and it was one of the first to do what was needed to maximize profit, including waging wars. From now then on, people discovered more ways to maximize profit through cutting product costs and locating where taxes are low and laws are loosely enforced.
These sent corporations searching for greater profits across the globe. And it might have taken centuries, but eventually a global capitalist economy emerged. Thanks to the expansion of capitalism, nations are now scrambling to conquer and control other territories to settle on and exploit, whether it be the resources in said territory or the poor natives of the area.
This, my friends, is called colonialism. Places like America were good at settler colonies, while places like the South America and the Caribbean were good for generating cash crops.
And if you think that exploiting a country is bad enough, consider how the plantations that made colonizers rich were built on the backs of slaves.
Thanks to colonialism, some countries began relying on others, like how Europe turned to the Americas to feed their demands during the Industrial Revolution, or how Brazil at that time was one of the largest producers of rubbers, and coffee relied too much on European trade.
Indeed, though in colonization, the colonizing powers managed to enrich themselves, colonized countries were left to deal with destroyed environments, a lack of national identity, and an overall inability to rule themselves after the colonization. So that's finally it. Well, not all of it. There's still so much to learn past the first waves of colonialism, but I think they got the gist of it.
I think so too. So to sum it up, the global economy can be traced all the way back to the Mesopotamia, but a special focus can be given to the Silk Road due to its high level of cultural diffusion.
Then the epiphany and breaking free from the feudal system awakened our capitalistic tendencies.
Next, because of the onslaught of capitalism, companies in the 1600s sought to monopolize and maximize profit.
And to do that, they eventually ended up colonizing some countries, which has effects still evident till today.
So the next time you eat a mango that came all the way from India or wear your shirt that was made in Bangladesh, you have to think about the different events and intricate economic processes that went into play, the exploitation that might have occurred, and everything else that got it from some lousy factory to your very hands.
That's Cramming Contempo, and we'll see you next time.